Hello, welcome back to another wonderful opportunity to be with us throughout these daily devotional messages as we're preparing for Easter Sunday and preparing for a message that is going to help us navigate through life's difficulties when we have been given God's promises. That is one of the things that Sunday morning, that early Sunday morning, revealed to those who were weary, who have been worn down, and who was burdened by the events that had taken place, the coming into a realization that God was still and is now still faithful. And so here today, we are going to continue on through our daily devotional messages that is addressing this, as you've seen there, these five main reasons why it is difficult to stand on God's promises. But you know what? Regardless of how difficult it is worth the wait. And or today, we're going to spend the day number two. On this day, we're looking at this one here. You want it now. You want it now. That is one of those things that just seems to make us grow weary when it's dealing with God's promises. This is one of the things that makes it difficult because what we want it now. But how many of you know that God's promises always come right on time? And it is truly worth the wait. Let's take a look at this scripture from Habakkuk. And when we read this scripture, it says this simply from the New International Version. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and it will not prove false. Though it lingers, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. And so here today, we just want to look at these verses from this devotional message dealing with this aspect that we want it now, but God's promises always come right on time. Look, I know, as we have got acclimated into this microwave world where everything we want it now. Waiting has been something that has become difficult. Waiting is something that is almost alienated. It's almost a foreign idea in our modern day society. Point blank and simple, waiting is hard, especially when you are waiting on something as significant as God's promises in your life. It can feel like time is standing still, like God maybe has forgotten about you, or like the promises that God has given has never been real in the first place. Well, I want to remind you that here in the Habakkuk passage, are reminded that God is never late, but he is always intentional in all of his promises. God told the prophet Habakkuk that the vision he gave would take some time, but that this vision, that this promise was still trustworthy. He said, though it lingers, wait for it. When something lingers, it really moves us into a place of becoming weary. But even though we may have to wait on healing, we may have to wait on our breakthrough, we may have to wait on a season of restoration, even though we may have to wait on clarity before we take the next step. That delay may feel weighty, but the delay is never a denial. This verse assures us that it will certainly come and will not delay. It may look like a delay on our end, but in God's timing, we can see something different. When we see it from God's perspective, it gives us highlight insight to something different. Here it is. First thing in particular, it shows us that God's timing is appointed. God doesn't rush his timeline. God does not maneuver his timeline, but God's timeline is appointed. But hold up, this also allows us to be able to know that God's promises are permanent. even when it has taken time for it to unfold. There is nothing that can make God's promise to be something that is less than permanent. It would never be meant to be temporal or just be limited because of the timing that it takes. And so, if with these different things in mind, here are some things that we can do in our lives. We can wait with expectation. God is not stalling, but He is preparing. And then that also leads me to think about this right here. If we are waiting with expectation, knowing that God is not stalling, but God is preparing, I want to encourage you to do not waste your wait. Allow it to be a season where you grow deeper with Him. Do not waste your time as you wait. Get prepared yourself, just as sure as He is preparing things as well. We are to trust that what God is doing and what we are waiting on is worth the waiting as He works behind the scene. One of the things that we are going to need to do is to be anchored in what God says and not what we see. Be anchored in what God said and not in what we see. And when we practice these things, we can have some assurance in our difficult times and seasons when problems arise and it seems like it's difficult to hold on or to stand on the promises of God as we continue on this Holy Week. I pray that you will hold fast to this devotional message. And as I'm thinking about this, preparing for that Sunday morning, when those women, when they arrived at the at the empty tomb, and the angel said unto them, "Why are you here, looking for him when he is not dead?" But He has already given you a promise. He told you to meet Him somewhere. Now go and get my disciples and meet me there. How are we going to hold on to those promises of God when we are arriving at places that seems like there should be death or seems like things are difficult? Well, I don't want to get into the sermon aspect, but join me throughout this week and then even on Sunday morning as we unpack more of this topic of dealing what it means to be dealing with God's promises in the midst of problems. My prayer is that may God bless you and surely may God keep you on this day.